Hello there, guns and gals, and welcome to the network. I am Neptura, and today we are going to be looking over the top 5 plays of PMGC. Our first look at the list will start with number 5 and GodLike in Miramar. GodLike approached Stalwart Esports up on San Martin Hill, as Pika immediately shoots and knocks Neo. Jonathan and ZGod come in to support, forming a sandwich around Pika while he heals and finishing him. ZGod is meanwhile knocked by Top, and ClutchGod pushes in to pressure Stalwart's fragger action from any support he may give. Jonathan throws a nade to suppress Top and goes back for the double revive. ClutchGod is eventually knocked by action with nades. Scry flanks from the bottom of the hill with mollies while the remaining members of GodLike throw smokes. Scry knocks ZGod again, but Neo knocks Scry in return. Unfortunately for GodLike, S2G turn out for a third party. As a result, Neo gets knocked from across the road, and so does Jonathan as he goes for the push. Despite the eventual failure of this push, I actually really liked the play coming in from GodLike. Jonathan had a great sense of tactics in coming around from the bottom once Pika was knocked to finish him off. If he had come from the top, Top would have had a clear sightline like he did with ZGod. As it was, the slope of the mountain meant he didn't have an angle onto him from on top, so he was able to get the finish and push forward. ClutchGod also did well to push action into the compound, completely taking his attention off the rest of the team and letting them focus on the other three. Even if he lost his fight, the play was still worth it in the help it gave to the rest of the team. Unfortunately, the team weren't able to optimize this advantage. Scry's play was crucial in GodLike's downfall. His knock crippled them in terms of how they could play this. Action now moved over to his team, meaning that even after Scry's knock, GodLike still had a 2v2 to deal with. The remaining teammates were consistent in their aggression, and the push was good. GodLike could have easily won this due to the nature of the terrain, which made it difficult for Stalwart to have the upper hand, and was easier to climb on GodLike's side. However, S2G were watching and were able to pick up both Jonathan and Neo without them really knowing what happened. It would have been a great victory for them, and I believe it would have been theirs had there not been a third-party play against them. Next up on the list, in 4th place, is A7 and their decimation of Nova on Pachinki Hill. A7 pulls up to Nova as a full squad. Mafioso stays behind while the rest of A7 rotate to the south of Nova's position. Order attacks Mafioso but is taken out, with Mafioso nearly knocked himself. Carrillo knocks Paraboy from behind a ridge. Revo takes the car to scout and push, while the other two push towards King and take him out. Jimmy has nothing left to do but retreat in a vehicle as a solo. A7's aggression was a key element in their success here, especially with Nova's lack thereof. The terrain was ideal for free movement on A7's side, but a more attentive mindset from Nova would have made things rather difficult for them having the high ground. As it was, only Order, being on the front line, attempted anything like a rebuttal to the attack. Once Order was knocked, there was no wave of support from the rest of the team, which enabled A7 to sweep in as strongly as they did. On A7's side, their accuracy, especially over a distance to Paraboy, was crucial in their assault. Once both main fraggers were out of the way, A7 were smart in their flank forwards. They used the terrain to go around rather than straight forward where the going would be tough and open for their vehicles to navigate. Instead, going around was quicker, easier, and much more covered. I always like when teams use both vehicles and running to push an enemy. Na'Vi are also good at this, and A7 showed us a great example of how effective this tactic can be. By using the car to go around behind as well as the two on foot, it confused the enemy, it put him under pressure, unsure which way to look, and made it difficult to think logically. Who should I go for first? Which is most dangerous? How can I get them all? What do I do after this? These kinds of questions make it hard to make correct plays in such a short space of time. Once King is knocked, it's all Jimmy can do to move out and keep the team alive. In terms of positioning, A7 were also correct to go for the side flank rather than straight ahead because of how Nova were situated on the hill. To go forward would be to put themselves in a surrounded position. To go to the side allowed them to force Nova to come together on one front, making it easier for A7 to attack on one side than all angles at once. Our third spot is taken by S2G in the second Erangel of Day 1. S2G are pulling up onto the squad house at Watertown, which is already occupied by Enigma Galaxy. Hamadi gets knocked by Savin while he tries to regroup, and S2G immediately go for the push. Freak throws a nade as S2G approach, but it's cooked too much and falls short. S2G crash the compound, 2 in the front smaller building, Timber into the squad house, and Silas behind on a ridge. Nades are thrown, pushing Enigma together and heavily damaging Hamady. Silas pulls up behind the enemy in a long flank on the ridge, and Hamady is knocked by another nade as he tries to heal. Timber knocks Freak on the staircase, giving S2G control of the building. Silas regroups to his team as Lord behind a vehicle is the only man standing for Enigma Galaxy. As Hamady bleeds out, Lord knocks Timber through a window, but Silas and Savin have that support and surround Lord to take him out. S2G started off with a great use of the angles the terrain afforded them. The aggression from the team paired with Hamady leaving his position and opening himself up won them the fight. Once the knock was achieved, S2G pushed in such a way as made it very difficult for Enigma to overcome it. A full send into the main house put a lot of pressure onto the team, who were not well positioned for the kind of push that happened. Only one was in the house, the other by the wall outside, and of course Hamady knocked next to him. The 2 S2G members by the wall suppressed Lord from going in on the offense or offering support to Freak inside. With Freak eliminated, Timber now has a perfect view of Enigma's position, enabling him to pressure the team further with nades. Silas, holding the angle from the side, completely netted in Enigma into the corner where Lord was, and although he was able to knock Timber through a window, Silas, regrouping, helped Savin to surround and take him out. This is one of those fights that Enigma really couldn't win. S2G created the perfect push to completely cripple their enemy. Had Enigma had a more prominent presence in the squad building, things might have gone differently, as it wouldn't have been so easy for S2G to take over the entire compound. This list would not be complete without some recognition of Navi's performance, and so they fit in right here at number 2. At the end of the first match of Day 2, Navi have fit themselves in at the western edge of zone. Tixie snakes towards Infinity while the rest of the team push back Enigma Galaxy. Nades are thrown and Tixie pushes back to regroup as the whole team turns their attention to Infinity. Tixie knocks God Dunny with a nade while Matic drives around for some info. Paraboy knocks Mela, who split from his team at the same time that Tixie takes out Logan. Navi now have control of the west side, with Kitsune going for the long flank up north. Tixie joins Kitsune to have the full team in a wide spread across the west of the zone. Navi start making moves up the hill, sandwiching 4 rivals between themselves and S2G, with Nova on the south. Mekyu hangs behind on the ridge while the rest of the team begin the assault on 4 rivals. Matic nades Rith and the team immediately pushes forward. Tixie knocks Epul next. Matic finishes Rith with a molly while S2G take out another member of 4 rivals. This makes Navi come into direct contact immediately with S2G as they push forward, but both take a step back. Navi turn their attention instead to Enigma, Matic knocking 2 before getting knocked himself. Enigma are eliminated, but the last man standing for 4 rivals steps up, finishing Matic and knocking Tixie before being finished himself. Tixie is revived and they spread out as Nova attempt to take the high ground in the resulting 3 versus 4. Kitsune flanks around the edge of the zone west, Mekyu goes center and Tixie stays on top. Nova go for a similar spread but on lower ground and out of the zone. Tixie finds order and kills him with Paraboy being the next target. He's brought to low health as he gets pushed in by the zone. A nade from Jimmy pushes Tixie back on top of the hill by Paraboy, who gets found and finished. Jimmy meanwhile gets knocked by Mekyu, who is still in center position, and King returns the knock with Tixie from farther down, but Mekyu uses his high ground to kill King for the win. This first move from Navi illustrate how aware they are of their surroundings. Rather than going as a full squad to Enigma, which would leave room for Infinity to push up behind them, they keep Tixie on that border to keep an eye on the duo. Tixie also waited for his team to back him up. He didn't rush forward because it was only 1 or 2. Once he had the full team at his back, they went for the push, and over the open ground the win was easy. This left them in complete control of the western edge of zone. Keeping Mekyu back to give info on the south end of the zone, the other 3 start a barrage of nades onto 4 rivals, and only push once they have a knock. They don't stop using throwables once they're on their way though. The nades pouring in mean 4 rivals are more occupied with evading the explosions and rezzing their teammates than with Navi. S2G also don't make things easy, and 4 rivals have nowhere to go. Once the majority of the enemy team is out of the way, they disengage from S2G and move over to Enigma, clearing out any hindrance to their path and sorting through teams who they think they have a better chance at defeating. Having pushed back Enigma to an inconvenient position earlier, that team is easier to take on than S2G, who have had a stronger spot in the circle and had been dominating all game. S2G, having just come off of a fight with Dig Savior, were quite happy to put off the fight with Na'Vi. To have left Enigma where they were and go for S2G would have been to allow Enigma to have an easy third party against them. As a full squad, Enigma would have had the man advantage and Na'Vi could have easily lost against both teams. Fortunately for Na'Vi, Nova take over the fight with S2G, defeating them while still in a disadvantaged position, which allowed Na'Vi to reset. Nova meanwhile take a 2-2 split across the south end of the circle into zone, giving up the high ground almost entirely. Kitsune from his wide flank found Paraboy at the top of the hill, nearly taking him out and giving him very easily over to Tixie once he got that info to push. Tixie had fantastic trigger discipline behind the buggy, waiting for Jimmy to run out of bullets and have to go back down the hill into zone before engaging and helping Mekyu with the knock. The knock was returned, but at this point the push was easy. Kitsune's flank around the side was crucial in Na'Vi's win, giving him a much better angle for support and making it harder for King to combat both him and Mekyu. This kind of flank from Kitsune has been working really well for the team. It surrounds the enemy, gives a lot more info than they would have normally, it supports against the front line, and it pressures the other team into making mistakes. Na'Vi have perfected the art of a wall across zones, as we have seen in previous events, creating boundaries that enemies cannot cross and hemming them into small areas to be naded. This is working really well, and it's something we do not see too much of in the European scene, which is why in particular it's doing so much for Na'Vi. Now we are almost at the end of our list, and we have seen some fantastic plays up till now. Although PMGC was full of top-tier gameplay, this number 1 spot is taken by, in my opinion, one of the most memorable fights of the tournament, in terms of strategy, communication, and skill to back up the plan. With that being said, our number 1 play is going to be from Team Secret, in their fight with S2G in the last match of Day 2. Upon landing in Severny, S2G surround Team Secret's Mad Toy. With only a rifle, Mad Toy goes up to the roof and throws a molly down, but is chased anyway. Calci from S2G is knocked by Team Secret from a distance. Timber is low health and jumps from the building at the same time as Mad Toy, who sees and knocks him. Silas chases Mad Toy up the building again and finally knocks him. At this point, Team Secret Frito comes in for the support, immediately interrupting the Savin Timber res. Frito knocks Silas with a prone shot, and he next rounds the building and opens the door for an angle, which makes Savin stuck behind it and Frito completes the 1v3. Mad Toy played this extremely well. By skillfully evading the entire team, he occupied all of S2G's attention, dropping their guard and allowing the rest of his team to approach. Using throwables, changing floors, dropping from buildings, all this focused S2G onto him, watching and listening for his movements and following him because he's just a solo. They were aware of the rest of Team Secret. Calci got knocked from long distance early on, but since no push alerted them, they didn't do too much about it. Once Mad Toy is eventually knocked, it was too late. He had delayed it long enough that Frito was able to come in for support. At this point there are only 2 members of S2G up, and both are occupied in resing. Frito goes for the easiest one, which also calls over Silas from his res. Here was S2G's biggest mistake. Silas should never have left Calci still knocked. With Timber's res being also interrupted, this immediately put them to a duo. Savin was still up, so there was no reason to go for such an immediate support move. Silas does get knocked, leaving Savin as a solo. Frito was really good with his angles, constantly keeping both space and cover between himself and his enemies. Going back and forth around corners enabled him to keep S2G at bay whilst keeping the aggressive momentum. Unfortunately, sometimes the game gets in the way of the gameplay. Savin got stuck behind the doors it opened and therefore was an easy target. This year's PMGC was a really exciting event that saw the rise of the Middle East, the continued domination of Nova, and the overall improvement of skill in all regions. As we head into the 2022 season, I look forward to seeing these teams again in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and see you next time.